The Minnesota Ballpark Authority has authorized a proposal to extend the Twins' Target Field lease another 20 years. Is it time to party like it's 2059? Well, not until everybody gets locked on Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Locked On Twins, your daily go-to destination for the top Minnesota Twins insight, discourse, and analysis. Personally, it's my favorite show of the Locked On Podcast Network, which, by the way, brings you your team every day. I'm co-host Dave Brown, a professional ball writer since 1998. Oh, it's a long time ago now. A BBWA member since 2012 and a Baseball Hall of Fame voter for the second straight year. Please follow me on Twitter at @AnswerDaveBrown if you like. You can also find me on Blue Sky at AnswerDave, but not at AnswerDave. I'm still working out exactly how Blue Sky does this, but you can just look for Answer Dave and I'm there. So, yeah. You know who else is here? Brandon Warren across from me in cyberspace. He's a Twins watcher for 30 years who not long ago covered the team on a daily basis. As a professional, he asks that you elevate the discourse with him at Brandon_Warren on Twitter and simply by finding Warren on Blue Sky. So you can do that very easily. And you know who else is with us? Theo Tollefson is with us. Theo Tollefson is a professional journalist. He's a Twins writer. He writes for Zone Coverage, and he was at a very special meeting earlier this week to discuss with us what's the latest information going out there on the Twins ballpark lease extension. It's still in the early stages. It's got to go through all the levels of bureaucracy. It's so much fun. Theo, welcome to the show. First of all, I guess I'm circumventing Brandon for the moment. Just say hi to the nice people, Theo.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me back, guys. I know it's been a while since I was last on, and Dave, I do have to just call it your Hall of Fame ballot for a good reason, voting for Augusto Pedroia, one of my favorites growing up as a kid, being a second baseman. I still will have my thoughts and criticisms about giving Alex Rodriguez a vote, but we'll save that for another day.
I thought about not voting for Alex Rodriguez for a couple different reasons, but I did anyway, and I think I'll continue to. But that's
another conversation.
That would make a good other conversation. Exactly right. Oh, by the way, Brandon, FanDuel is very important to us, is it not? And tell us how exactly.
Good afternoon, sports fans. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Win, lose, or draw. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And by the way, I apologize. I fired the intro late. When you hit that button, sometimes it takes a second and you don't want to double click it. So that awkward little pause at the beginning of the show, that's on me. I'm taking full responsibility for that.
Well, hopefully we all had funny looks on our faces. So people that see the show, in addition to hearing it, got a chuckle out of it. I don't know. But maybe it's for the audio only people. It'll be like, well, is the show starting or not? But unfortunately it is. We're doing a show.
Took a little longer to get locked on. It happens.
Right. Yeah, sometimes the lock doesn't quite mesh. And the lock is now meshed and is now locked. So we've talked a little bit about what we're going to be talking about in the show, just as a preview. But we've got Theo on here because there's a little news and about the Twins lease. And Theo, you attended a meeting earlier this week of the Minnesota Ballpark Authority. Now, I don't know if there were snacks at this meeting. I don't know if there were protesters at this meeting. Can you kind of set the stage for, first of all, tell us what the Minnesota Ballpark Authority is for anybody that doesn't know.
Yeah, so they are the public and private operation that oversees the lease between the Twins and the state of Minnesota at Target Field. They were established back in 2007, I want to say, or 2006 when the legislation to really get the funding and everything underway for construction at Target Field. So they have quarterly meetings. They meet 4 times a year to just look at the operations and funding that goes into Target Field, the upkeep of the ballpark. So everything that has gone from the big scoreboard changes a couple of years ago to the little things you see, whether that's changing of concession stands, they're the ones who work with the Minnesota Twins to make sure everything is moving and smoothly and operating and really making Target Field one of the best ballparks to visit in the entire country.
So the tax that they're talking about extending, that pays for or helps to pay for, I don't know if it entirely pays for these ballpark improvements and upkeep, but it's certainly an important part of it. Is that fair to say?
They provide the public funding side of it. So the sales tax, which was originally established in 2006 when the legislation to get Target Field built was passed, was 0.015 sales tax. So that's pretty much 3 cents for every $20 spent within Hennepin County to pay off the construction debt that they owe to the builders of Target Field. And that was put out through, I want to say, a 20-year payoff period, which is about to end in 2026. So this is I know what I reported yesterday is news to a lot of people, but this is an initiative they started back in 2024, actually, to try to get this legislation passed a year ago at this time, but it didn't really make it anywhere on the House floor with the Minnesota state legislature. So they're trying again this year, and I think it's fair to say this is getting a little more notice from a lot of different people because of the ownership status for the Twins. A year ago at this time, seemed like the Pohlads were still going to be around for the long term, but now we know they're exploring the sale of the team. We do not know who this future owner is, but this obviously will have impacts on whoever the future owner is, whether it's an individual or a group.
To what degree do you sense this would make the team more attractive to buy? Because I don't have ironclad sourcing on this, but I have heard that in addition to what Dan Hayes, sorry, got my Hayes and my Brown confused, that there has been significant progress on the back end, and it's an exciting future for the ownership of the team. I will just say that much. Does your sense kind of tell you that this really changes much, or is it kind of like, yeah, it's just a little added security, it's icing or maybe even a cherry on top of the sundae as opposed to the actual toppings? Like it's probably just nice to have, but it's not insanely lucrative in the deal for the Pohlads or the new owners.
I think it is more of that icing on the cake just to make sure you have a little bit. So what I got from Dan Kenny, who is the executive director of the Minnesota Ballpark Authority yesterday, he said that, we're going to try to get $9 million a year in public funding to help cover repair and upkeep expenses. Now, ownership has to pay for 100% of that, but if there are those bigger projects where they can collectively put money towards. So this was the example I got from him yesterday. So say there are like 3 bulbs out in the lights that go on Target Field at night. If it's just those 3 bulbs that need replacing, it's 100% on the ownership to just replace those. But if they go in together to replace all the lights and upgrade from, what it used to be when it opened, which I think he said was a lithium powered lighting system, to what it is now to LED, they go in collectively. That public funding goes towards that. So it's not just the Pohlads or future owners who are paying for this project. So there's a collective in the balance of who's paying what out and making sure that, the upkeep is at its best.
How much in the air could you feel the idea of the team selling looming? I'm talking about something maybe less tangible, but was there a tinge of that in the air when you were there?
Honestly, they didn't really have much on that. That is more, this is the bureaucracy as you have on this. This is more of just like getting things set up in the paper. This was something they were working on a year ago and they wanted to try again. And I think they know what looms in potential ownership, but they don't know who that could be as much as the rest of us. And that's pretty much where they're at. And they'll probably know a little bit more than us, maybe like a day ahead of anything getting announced in the near future, if Dan's reporting holds up. And not that I'm discrediting Dan, it's just, you never know how these things move because there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff and this is probably the easiest in terms of getting some of this behind the scenes stuff Twins fans aren't really interested in or well aware of, because it is both a public and private funded group. So there is, having to put their meeting agendas out just like you would for a city council or school board meeting, putting that notice out there. That's going to be the best available. And I still got one of their meeting packets. So there's more stuff for me to dig into there with, their funding expenditures for 2024 at Target Field, what went where money wise. So there's a lot to go into, a lot of nuts and bolts that not everyone's going to have fun with. But, I was joking to one Twins person there yesterday, just saying, this meeting only took like 20 minutes. And I'm like, compared to some city council and school board meetings that I've sat through in my reporting career, that was just a breeze to sit through.
Sitting through meetings sounds like fun. School board meetings, oh my goodness, that's a nightmare. But before we take the conversation any further with Theo Tollefson, let's take our first break, and then when we come back, we'll talk more about the lovely bureaucracy that has the Twins in place until at least 2039 and maybe 2059.
Yep, definitely hit the wrong thing. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. And one of my favorite memories was attending a concert just this last year. The energy and excitement were unforgettable at US Bank Stadium when I saw Metallica. Mammoth open for them. It was incredible. Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets to an upcoming Timberwolves game using the Gametime app. With Gametime Picks, I found amazing deals and could even see the view from my seat before I bought. Plus, the super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNMLB, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time.
Locked On Twins has returned, and we've got Theo Tollefson of Zone Coverage talking about the Twins lease at Target Field, which is funded with a tax through this year. The lease itself goes to 2039 and might be extended to 2059 if this legislation that the Minnesota Ballpark Authority has approved gets approved by the Minnesota legislature. One of the things I wanted to help make clear for the people that haven't read his story yet or are just trying to find out what's going on, an added level to the bureaucracy and the complications of getting this passed. Theo mentioned that they tried to pass a measure a year ago and it didn't happen. The politicians are trying to kind of piggyback, maybe, I don't know if that's an appropriate word, healthcare funding and how Hennepin County funds its healthcare to this tax mechanism. And that's kind of complicated the thing a little bit. Theo, can you sort of explain that to the people, why maybe that would delay getting this done?
I think the best way to put it is the Hennepin County officials are leading the front with this. So when this is going to be presented to Minnesota legislators as lobbying efforts, it's Hennepin County officials and not the Minnesota Twins themselves going out and doing this. So what they've done is come together collectively to extend the city sales tax, well, not city sales tax, the county sales tax. And they're hoping to have 80% of this go towards the upkeep of Hennepin County Medical Center in downtown Minneapolis and 2 other level 1 trauma care centers within Hennepin County. And 80% of that sales tax would be funding the medical side of it. And then the other 20% would fund the extension of Target Field's lease, as well as some community sports funding within the county and public libraries, which were 2 things that were a part of the original legislation that passed in 2006. So they're just trying to keep that grandfathered in while they focus in on extending the Twins lease, but most importantly, making sure that medical care centers within Hennepin County are getting the best upkeep they can have as well. So it's a lot of things coming together as one, and they added the Hennepin County Medical Center and other hospitals into this year's legislation that they're trying to present to state lawmakers, which wasn't a part of last year's, and I have that linked at the top of my story. So they're hoping having all this, collectively as one will help move it forward in the lawmakers' priorities and their agendas. But as I mentioned towards the end of the story, there is drama, unsurprisingly, between state politicians. We had not just 1, but 2 people elected in November that do not live in the districts they are supposed to represent, and
Naughty.
that is something you can't do in Minnesota state law, and I think it's very common throughout the entire country that you have to live within the district you are representing. So that's changing things up. So there are a couple special elections happening, and because the Democrats and Republicans in the state house can't agree on everything right now, the Democrats have threatened to strike until these elections are done and these seats are officially filled, and that could delay this moving anywhere. And they're supposed to convene on Tuesday the 14th. That's supposed to be the first day of this leg, but it's anyone's guess when this will happen. So it's kind of out of the Twins, NBA's, and Hennepin County's hands, and they just kind of have to leave things up for the time being. And I didn't see an official last day of the leg, but obviously we know as Minnesotans that this usually ends sometime in May, usually towards the end of the month, right before Memorial Day. So there's still going to be a 4-month window where we can see things picking up, but for the time being, it's kind of entering this dead zone where you're just going to have to wait and see where the legislator, when they meet, and then what they're going to prioritize at the very beginning of the session, and where things are going to be crunched into the last minute. And this could be one of those things where they crunch in the last minute, because that's not uncommon.
I feel like I'm going to have to reach out to my friend Jerry Mander to ask him about that situation, because do you get the sense that so there's a lot of controversy with how stadiums are funded and to what extent billionaires kick in. I have a few books on my shelf that were written, I think, at the advent of Tampa Bay trying to find financing for a stadium that they've been doing for a long time. Do you get the sense that this is viewed as an overwhelming positive, not only to the Twins, but to the city? Because, I mean, I kind of feel like that's what you're saying, as far as these are some pretty essential, important services to make sure are maintained. And so if you can sell it as your tax dollars are taking care of this, in addition to a ballpark, do you get the sense that it makes it look better on the surface?
I think it's easier for people to digest the framing of it of, yes, this is funding essential services and medical care provided within Hennepin County, but it's also the essential services of public libraries, which have been very underfunded over the last decade, and just community sports for youth. And, some families are going to have easier time. I know from my experience growing up, putting their kids in travel ball and all these other experiences, while others are just going to do what is provided through a city. In-house baseball was mainly what I played, but that was because I didn't want to deal with the politics of travel ball, but another story for another time. But it's just these essential things. And then you add in the Twins extension at Target Field till 2059. And I think there is a good significance with that year, because that will be the 50th season they would have at Target Field. And as I mentioned in the story as well, we only have 5 teams that have had 50 or more seasons in Major League Baseball right now at their current ballparks. The obvious being the Red Sox and the Cubs, likely not going anywhere till the end of time. Dodger Stadium, Angel Stadium, and I almost thought that was entering its 50th season. Then I remembered the 70s were 50 years ago. And Kauffman Stadium, but that might be around for only so many years now, because the Royals are trying to make efforts of moving into downtown Kansas City and having a new ballpark there. So there's levels of significance with that. And then you also keep in mind that would be 99 years of Twins baseball in Minnesota. And that would easily surpass the total. Well, they already have surpassed the amount of years the Senators were in the nation's capital, but there's a lot of significant, just milestones to reach. So hopefully it all entices lawmakers to get these public goods provided in essential services, but also the entertainment value of, what people have come to appreciate with Target Field over the last 15 years. And I know the on-field product has definitely soured a lot of Twins fans from coming to the ballpark and making the drive down from either the northern part of the state, if they live up there, more than an hour's drive, or just whatever. But I think there is just a lot of incentive to hopefully get these things passed and see what, Target Field's future can hold for itself.
Theo, is it kind of something that is, maybe, I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but I can remember when the Twins seemed to be on the verge of being, excommunicated from the league, taken out of the league, not even relocated, but expunged basically. And that in a quick turned into funding for Target Field, which turned into the Twins being a stable organization, one of the more stable organizations in the league. Is it true that it's important to not only the ownership, but to the fans to remind them that the Twins are going to be here, that this lease goes through not just 2039, but 2059. I mean, that's as far into the future as anybody who's alive now can really see. I mean, that's just, and to have that as the baseball team being something that is going to be in Minnesota, that isn't moving. Is that kind of important to the psyche of Twins fans? Because, you can worry day to day about how a team is doing in the standings, but if you have to worry about them leaving and uprooting, that's a potential trauma on a certain scale to Twins fans. So how important is it from that standpoint to have this locked in?
I think, if you're just going to focus on the Twin side of the target field lease with this whole package going towards the state legislator, I think that is definitely something to really hammer home is lawmakers have the opportunity to ensure the Twins are here, not just for the next 15 years, but 20 or 35 years. Can't do math that far ahead. I don't want to think about 2059 in the long term, but you know what I mean. That's essential. And that pretty much ensures that a new ownership group probably, if they keep, if whoever takes over from the poll ads is still around in the 2050s, and it will probably be the next generation, if it's a family or whatnot, it really puts it on them to have the conversation about moving the team then, and who knows what the world will look like in the 2050s if we make it. So,
Yeah.
It is a really
Good
important
point.
thing for lawmakers to, take into consideration of, I'm sure there are some who have had their complaints online as Twins fans over the years about their worries about moving this team from a new ownership group or the poll ads moving the team. And we are far enough removed from what happened in 2002 with the contraction. And fortunately, the Twins and Expos, obviously the Twins having a much longer time around than the Expos, but, those two teams being safe from contraction. But yeah, I mean, this is really the thing that weighs on lawmakers is, obviously there are a lot of other elements that are part of this proposition, but if you are just solely focusing on the Twin side of this and want to see what their future looks like, not just for the next 15 years, but beyond that, this is your effort to say, yes, we want to make sure we're doing our part to keep the Minnesota Twins here in Minnesota and see their future to 2059 and beyond.
We're going to talk more with Theo Tollefson. We'll wrap up our ballpark lease talk, and maybe we'll talk a little St. Paul Saints as well when we come back from this commercial break.
From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Your team goes home and you still get the bonus, whether you're rooting for my Vikings or the Detroit Lions who just smoked them. Win or lose. Win or lose. It's the best deal to do postseason football because you don't got to worry about that crushing defeat. FanDuel's app will give you everything you need for live bets, same game parlays, and so much more. Again, win or lose, you are still going to get to that $200 in bonus bets, and all it costs you is a little $5 bill. So visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Welcome back to Locked On Twins, and we've been talking with Theo Tollefson of Zone Coverage about Twins lease extension, and we could go on and on about the ballpark. I did want to ask you, since you know more about the St. Paul Saints than most people in my sphere, what do you think as far as coming at it from the angle of the players that the Twins have added this offseason, be it catcher that they just traded for, Diego Cartera, to Mickey Gasper. There haven't been too many more, but what are the Saints looking like for 2025 as far as what kind of competition they're going to give the rest of their league?
Truly, I think they'll probably have one of the best starting rotations in AAA to start the season, with a lot of their top pitching prospects going to start the season there. think it's very safe to say Zebby Matthews is going to start his season in the minor leagues after some of the results he had after being rushed up to the major leagues. Even though he still pitched very admirably last year, there's still some room for growth there. So it's safe to say he's going to be starting the season with St. Paul. Not to mention you have Andrew Morris, Corey Lewis, and Marco Raya, who all finished their seasons there as well after, really strong performances at Double-A. So that's already 4 guys there. And then not to forget Randy Dobnak, but he will definitely be there, probably piggybacking after, a start after one of these guys to start the season. And there are a lot of other good guys coming up behind them, CJ Culpepper being one of them down in Double-A. I think he'll probably start the season there. But I think the only thing they need to fill the roster out with is a couple outfielders. Obviously, some of the guys who are on the Major League 40-man right now, Manuel Rodriguez, Deshaun Kersey Jr., are more than likely to start the season in AAA, but not for very long. And I think it's really a matter of when and not if Walker Jenkins is going to be playing in St. Paul at some point this season. So I think this is probably going to be, obviously, a lot of these prospects are going to be with the team at different times, but this is probably going to be the best iteration of the St. Paul Saints we've seen since they become an affiliate in 2021.
So what does your gut say on the assignment of Diego Cartaya? We talked about it a little bit off the air, and we spent a good chunk of the show on Thursday discussing it right after the trade was announced. And he looks like kind of someone who needs to see a level for a little bit, maybe even end and then start a new year there. But at Tulsa last year, you look at his line, it's not crazy impressive, but on FanGraphs, they have a 111 weighted runs created plus at Double-A, still a couple years younger than the average player. I'm enthused by the idea that he just is maybe a bit of a slow developer at those levels. And I even invoked the name Christian Vasquez as like, I see some thump, I see a good arm, and the MLB pipeline rankings kind of were fairly high on his defense, which is obviously Vasquez's calling card. I don't know. I think it's kind of funny. They traded a guy named Vasquez for him, and they might replace Vasquez with him. It's just kind of a funny bit of parallel structure in baseball. It always has a narrative or a story. Do you feel like he's going to start the year though at AAA, and what do you think of this trade? Because for me, it's basically picking up a 23-year-old catcher at no risk.
Yeah, it definitely is that. I think he will likely start his year in AAA. I think a lot of it will depend on if and when they move Vasquez before, maybe even Twins Fest in the next 2 weeks here, or before spring training. So I think he's going to get moved sometime in the next month, and they will practically have auditions for the backup catcher to start opening day. I think as of right now, Jair Camargo is more than likely going to be the backup to start the season, and we'll see them shuffle through catchers more frequently this upcoming season. And I would say Jeffers will likely catch 70% of the games as they try to figure out, who's where in their development, who's going to be the best fit long term. And they might just be taking a couple months at a time to have like Camargo up, and then if Diego's playing well, they might call him up. And I know Mickey Gasper is definitely not the most defensively astute catcher out there, but he might see a bit of playing time, more likely at AAA than in the majors behind the plate. I know Chris Williams, who has now departed for the Mets AAA team. He signed a free agent contract there. He is a guy I think they will use Gasper similarly too, because Williams played a lot of first base, corner outfield, in addition to catcher, even though that's what he was drafted as. I think that's likely what we'll see Mickey Gasper used as through St. Paul as the season goes on.
It's pretty clear that the Twins soured on Camargo after last season, just based on the kinds of players that they've added in a Spartan offseason. But do you see that his results in 2024 as being a possible blip? You mentioned that he's probably going to be the backup to start at AAA. Is there any reason to expect that he might be a little bit more of a favored son after a bounce back in 2025? Is that possible?
Yeah, I think he will have a good bounce back. I mean, he's been playing in the Dominican Winter League this offseason. He's got a really good numbers down there to improve upon. And a lot of his issues this last year were poor performance because of how unhealthy he was, not because he was regressing completely. So I think that's something to take into consideration. And I don't think he's been completely soured on yet. I know the Twins are, and they should be very proud of the fact they only use 2 starting catchers for 2 entire seasons in a row, and that's very unheard of these days. But it can only keep going for so long, and you got to get the next guy ready. And I think Camargo is showing signs in the Dominican Winter League that his bat is still very good as it was in 2023. I don't know if that's going to translate to hitting 20 home runs in the majors this upcoming season, but I think if he gets regular playing time, he could definitely show better performance at the plate than Christian Vasquez has since he signed the contract with the Twins.
Definitely a lot of topics going on that we could talk with Theo Tollefson about ad nauseum, but we're going to cut this episode short of Locked On Twins, and we hope that everybody out there in listening land and TV land have enjoyed it. But for Theo and for Brandon, I am Dave, wishing you all a very pleasant good evening, and we're going to Casilla tomorrow night.